Welcome to Talking in Stations, podcast Eve Online, recorded live on Twitch, Saturdays 1500 Universal Time. I am Matterall from Imperium News. Eve creates an appetite that pushes players to get more information than the game offers. This is a niche filled by fan-made media. My personal favorites were Potted Podcast, Warp Drive Active, and Hydrostatic Podcast. When the media moved to videocast, Mintship LOL and TMC Live filled the bill. All these shows were full of great information and engaging personalities. Last year, as INN's news chief, I wanted to recreate TMC Live with Nystrick and Drayden, two personalities that I favored. The idea was to produce a show for them, but due to scheduling conflicts, the show kicked off with Drayden, Dirk McGurk, myself, and some guests. That date was 3/10/2016. Over the next 12 months, hosts and guests shifted around, but miraculously, we only missed 2 episodes. 50 episodes were created, totaling 89 hours of material. That's not including the supplemental episodes. If we include interviews, after show, backstage pass episodes, the number jumps to 81 episodes, totaling 110 hours of material. You could drive across the US and back in less time. Please allow me to thank Rivra and Nystrick for stepping up and running the show in my absence, and McLeod for hosting the after show and producing TIS Now. Thanks to Caleb, Ashtarothi, Dirk, and Tiberius for bringing their insight to the show, and thanks to Matani for generously mentioning TIS on the Meta Show, which usually gets twice as many viewers as we do. And a big thanks to the people surrounding the show that hang around in the Discord that creates a fun and interesting environment. Eve is a big place, maybe the biggest virtual world out there, and no one knows it all. That's why we ask the most recognizable and knowledgeable players to visit the show when the episode is relevant to them. The very first show found Dirk and I poring over the Sov map, looking at troop movements converging on the Imperium. I had written an article on the unique war between bankers of I Want ISK and the Imperium-backed SMA alliance. And it was clear that something was happening. The convergence of forces formed the largest war in EVE history, the Casino War, and we covered it very well. In the early episodes, we had the attacking fleet commanders, Vince Drake and Graf Telk and Elise Randolph, Killer B, Pro God Legend, and others, and we had their perspective. We also had this perspective of the defending commanders like Lazarus Telraven, Elias, Asher Elias, and Boat. In later shows, we continued to go right to the sources to get the straight story. In the middle of the Casino War, we had Scion, the major diplomat for the Imperium, and I Want ISK owner Eep on the same show. When Citadels arrived, we talked to CCP Nullarbor, one of the authors of that mechanic, and Hard Knock's logistic director Muhadin appeared hours after anchoring the first keep star, Fort Knox. The night CCP banned gambling in EVE, we had the banned casino owners still dazed and confused on screen. We heard Manny and Boat from opposite sides discuss new capital meta. The list goes on and on. Amar Coronation, New World Order, Alpha Clones, Tribute War, Destruction of the First Keep Star, the Catch and Winter War, the massive Rorqual update, the Olivia investigation, New Eden Trade Company, Care for Kids, Burn Jita, and CSM 12. Also notable were occasional appearances of legendary players like Celine, the longtime leader of Mercenary Coalition, Manfred Sidious, the PLFC and expert theoretician, the Iron-Willed leader of NC. Vince Draken, and the Goon's financial cabal leader, Aerith. To top it off, we had deep interviews with Matani and later DBRB, aka Boat. So that was a pretty good year. Looking back, it was a pretty successful show, and that's what we're going to talk about today on Talking in Stations. Welcome, guys. How are you? Let's have some quick introductions. Let's start with Tiberius.
Hey, Tiberius Stargazer, editor and writer for EN24, also editor-in-chief for EVE NT, and a member of Destructive Influence in Northern Coalition.
Awesome. Derek, how are you? Good morning.
Hey, what's going on? Dirk McGurk from, I don't know, what am I from these days? I don't even have an alliance,
Turkestan.
man. I'm alliance-less. Yeah,
You're a
from
free
Turkestan.
agent.
That's right.
The Open Com Show.
Yeah. Great show last night, by the way. And Apothny, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. Just like an hour before the show went out, my new article was released on CZ, and I'm getting a whole range of responses.
Ooh, that's right. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Well, it's been 1 year. Let's go back in time to, let's go way back 2 years ago in the early days. Tiberius, take us back there.
Yeah, well, I guess this is where you and I both started podcasting, which is when we worked at EN24 together. I'd just come off from doing a few episodes of Lost in Eve and was looking for a new podcast. And you were like, oh, I really want to run a podcast. And hey, presto, the EN24 podcast was born.
I think
and
the
that
way,
ran.
sorry, I think the way it started, it was that I said, Bobman, is it okay if we do an Eve News 24 podcast? Because they had actually started one and it was quite horrible. They did one episode.
Yeah.
And I thought, that needs to be done better because I was an editor. I think you were an editor at the time. I don't know if you were or a writer.
No, not at the time.
Yeah. And so I said, okay, I'll do a podcast. But then you said, hey, I'm inheriting this podcast, which was Lost in Eve, right?
Yep,
And then that
that's
didn't
it.
work. And I was,
No, it didn't work out in the end.
yeah. You also said, well, you have to wake up at 4 a.m. to do it because I'm only going to do it at noon my time. I was like, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, you did it.
But that was the seed.
That was it. I mean, I think a lot of the format that we kind of worked on back then, a lot of the banter, a lot of the structure, how just the behind the scenes stuff that goes into setting these up was really sort of laid down in those early shows. We ran that for almost a year. I think we did 28 episodes. I think it was. So it's like nearly it was more than an episode every other week at that time. And then after that, it finished after you came over to TMC and started up Talking Stations. So
yeah, well, the way that started was, as I said before in the introduction, I just came over, started writing for a few articles, and then Sion asked if I'd be interested in running the news department. So I started writing the news department, and then I felt like, well, we can do news, but also bring in some more media stuff. And there was a whole streaming side to TMC at the time. So thought it's natural. Let's just pick a night that's available. Open Comms is already up and running, which has been kind of a pioneer in this sort of thing. So we ended up looking for a time slot and could only find Friday that nobody wanted. So we did Friday nights and said, okay, let's do something more newsy. What was really going on behind the scenes is I was trying to create the show that happened before TMC Live, and I was just going to produce it and put personalities that I wanted to watch on there, Nystrik and Drayden. But Dirk was out of work. So we were talking in channel.
the rest is history.
Yeah, it was like, wow, how can I do this and not put Dirk on? Because you got to listen. Dirk's one of the great.
It was out of work.
He was freelancing. Yeah, and so it's
Can't
just
do a show without the king of the pundits.
No. Oh my God, I forgot Caleb because I didn't see you on screen. Caleb, a quick introduction. So bad.
I'm just a little pundit. I'm just a market trader. Just leave me alone.
Caleb's a regular on the show.
Busy point one-isking people.
No, I leave that to the missus.
Anybody who knows this show knows Caleb. So sorry about that. I was going off visuals.
So Caleb's the non-favorite today.
Yeah. So then Dirk was on. I think we were talking to Caleb at the time, who's been an advisor to the show the whole time, and it just was unnatural not to have a show with Dirk. So we put him on with us, and that evolved very naturally. But it was kind of odd because it was kind of like the Open Comms show, but on a serious note. So we always thought it was the flip side of Open Comms, which was the kind of the place where you actually talk about Eve and stuff like that. And that's kind of how the show got its legs and started going originally.
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of had you were thinking that you were going to not necessarily be a permanent member of the show at the time. Yeah, and I'm sitting there going, why wouldn't you? And you're like, oh no, I just want to put people on there that And I'm like, no, dude, it's like, you've got as much ability to do this as anybody else. And now look at it. It's Talking in Stations with Matt Earl.
Meryl's big face in the yeah, well, the point wasn't, and I said it in the first episode, we're all hosts, and it was just to make the show not depend on one person, because that's usually a problem with any alliance or anything, is one person goes on vacation and everything stops. So the idea was to have it so anybody could take it over and run it, and it kind of worked, because when I did go on vacations, Reaver stepped in and did one with Caleb doing the button pushing. And then later, Nystrick did it when I went on vacation for a couple weeks. I was gone for 3 weeks, and she did 2 out of 3 shows, I believe. And then Christmas, we had some material, so we were able to put that out and stuff. But that's how we survived the year. But yeah, the idea was always to be a personality
show. How long have we actually had proper Twitch-based shows? Isn't it only 2 years?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah,
It's
pretty
about
much.
2 years.
I think it started with the Meta Show, right? That was kind of the kickoff, and then Open Comms, and then a year later, then we got Talking in Stations and all the other ones, and it kind of piled on.
Well, I mean, Open Comms came over to at that time TMC. When was that? Like September 2015, I think it was. We had already been doing. We had been like cross broadcasting, to Eve Radio, but then also doing Twitch at the same time for probably a year before that. So
I think Tips pointed out something in
we were doing it before
chat the other day about the fact that it's really a lot to do with technology, right? A lot of the button pushing and producing things like this was so difficult before 2 years ago, right? It was like really hardcore to do anything remotely like it. And when all these new things started being very much simple, really, then everyone started just piling on and doing them. It was still a little bit complicated, but now with Discord and things like that, it's just become so easy, right? Same with the OBS Studio instead of the old OBS. So now it's just mainstream.
Well, I mean, podcasting had been a thing for a long time in Eve. I mean, it was one of the early draws, that I had, back in 08, listening to, what I still consider to be kind of the golden age of really good podcasts, at that time. But Twitch changed everything. Twitch changed everything as far as, all of this.
Yeah, because it was TS first, right? When the codecs became good enough to actually do proper streaming, and even with guests and stuff like that, you got the first podcasts, right? But before that, you couldn't really do it because it was horrible quality and people's bandwidth was not good enough. So we've been basically trending towards this, basically on technology getting to a level where the barrier of entry was low enough, so you could actually do it as a semi-good amateur.
Yeah.
Who was that? Slight digression from the main point, but who was the lady that you had on Talking in Stations back in, I think it was November, who sat one of the original podcasts? I forget her name now. I was listening to, not Nystrict. She was a Diplo for
bestest friend.
Yeah, Ashtrothi's inspiration and muse. Her name was Adrianica. No, you know her name, Dirk. I'm going to pin this on you.
Danica.
Thank you.
Danica. Or Danica. I always
Danny. They call her Danny.
Danny,
I just couldn't remember the full name.
She had been Eve Radio for a long time, and
Eve Radio was there a long time. I think it ran.
Eve Radio's been there since almost the beginning. It's been it was around. Right? Yeah, I mean, it's been around for a long time, and now again, podcasts were off to the side, right? But then you had things like Eve Radio, where they were playing music most of the time. Then you had shows like Funky Bacon, that were not necessarily a talk show as much as it was kind of like a variety show related to Eve. And then the DJ Big Country Show started as a talk show, which eventually morphed into to what became the Open Com show. But again, podcasts and stuff like that were going on out there. The video stuff came later. I think like 2014, you began to see that again. We were cross broadcasting to Eve Radio, and then began to do this thing. Well, why not throw it out on Twitch? And it's like just a handful of viewers at that time. Most of the people that were listening to us, it was on Eve Radio, or in the podcast version that would go out. But then we started to do this Twitch thing. It wasn't until we came over to TMC that we went full on Twitch. It was completely Twitch at that point. But again, the addition of video has been great for a talk show type format. Number one, being live. Number two, having the video. You're getting something more in terms of the ability to communicate to the viewers that are out there. But being live is like really the big thing that it has over over podcasting. Because you got an audience to react to.
And by the same token as well, certainly when you're dealing with Eve and people are talking about Eve and streaming Eve at the same time, suddenly it's no longer it's just voices trying to explain these concepts about playing the game. You're getting a visual representation of it as well, and I think that's probably opened up the audience for streamers, particularly for Eve, quite a lot as well, because you can actually see and walk people through what they're doing as well.
But you have to take into consideration the other fact that if you go back before 2010, Eve community was pretty much a little bit afraid of doxing themselves and the whole anonymity issue. So it took a while before they actually moved into video and putting their faces on stream.
You're right. It's funny because my character, Matterall, didn't exist. I made him up so that I could write, and be anonymous so that my primary fictional characters didn't get killed, or I could just jettison the name after I didn't need it anymore when I stopped writing. So it's kind of funny that I put up this, we have these virtual personalities that represent us, and then I put up a second personality that I could get rid of to hide behind. And then I stuck my big old face out in the middle of public.
If you remember, in 10-11-ish, some people were actually experimenting with using the walking in stations, captain's quarters animation stuff to do things like talking heads in a very primitive way. There was that guy that did the Eve TV thing.
Yeah, it was well done, actually.
It was pretty nicely done, and it was just in the wake of that Eve series. What was it called? The one with the battleship thingy. What was it called? Help.
Oh yeah, the one with 3 episodes. I forget what it's called.
That one.
Yeah, we'll look it up and we'll insert it in the audio. But shoot, I forgot the name. It's a really well-known 3-part series. Basically, it was a movie made with the engine for a different game, Counter-Strike, and the Eve client, and they were able to produce these amazing movies. Thank you,
Nosy.
There's a gamer. There's our brain. There's a gamer.
He's like the fact checker that sits in the background listening to everything, pointing it out when you mess it up. No, you're wrong.
There's your fact checker, Dirk.
Well, yeah, exactly. But before the show, we were talking about the different shows that are out there. I go. Now all we need is a media show about the Eve media shows, and then they can fact check and things like that, and that'll have to be Noisy.
Yeah, totally. He would be the right guy for that too.
Eve Media Watch.
Yeah, but it was interesting the way all this developed, and it has been organic. It has been an issue of technology, and it has been an issue of people seeing other people do it and then say, I think I can do that. It's like that's one more step, not that whole jump. So people are more encouraged to do it. And some of the influences on talking in stations are clearly there, partly open comms, partly hydrostatic podcast. And those are the kind of 2 major influences. And but also, I think probably the biggest influence is the TMC Live, because that's really kind of what the Nexus was. But yeah, there you go. So that's talking in stations. What happened in the middle of that, and the reason we have a Patreon, is that ended up spending too much money that I didn't realize I was spending. So I said, I'll just ask to have that. I'll fundraise. I was encouraged to fundraise. I didn't do it for a few months. And then finally I said, okay, I'll do it to try to get that money back. And this next month, pretty much we'll earn all that $450, $500 back. thanks to donations from people who are supporters. And so I want to take a moment to thank them very much. I also want to say hello to my friend Nasaga, who left the show, or NASA, and he left Eve online to concentrate on his real life, and always thinking about him every time we do these shows. But I wanted to ask you guys if you had favorite episodes, because you guys have been here all a while.
The one that started the hashtag media wars.
You mean the one man media war? It's just throwing.
Yeah, the one. No, the prize war would be more correct term, right?
Which one was that?
Well, that was the one with Aerith, where Noisy Gamer had been talking to Raw and Bad Bobby about pricing and monetization and all these issues. And
Explain who Bad Bobby was, because he was never on, but Bad Bobby was hanging out with us for a while.
Bad Bobby was an Eve Meta Market, which is basically the market discussion group where people have loans and banking and stock exchanges and stuff like that. He's one of the big history scammers in there. So he's trying to come back and clear his name and stuff like that. So, I've been talking to him a bit.
He's also a Hydra at Alliance tournament pilot, if I'm not mistaken.
Isn't that too evil? No.
I may be wrong. I think that's Bad Bobby, right? I mean, Hydra.
I'm not familiar with the name, but then again, I
don't think so.
No, I'm thinking of Joe Citizen or Joe Public. He also hung out in Discord a little while. Joe Public is AKA for a Hydra pilot. No? That's got to be true. I'll have to look it up later. But Tiberius, did you have
alternative truth?
No, that one's true. I need to look it up for facts. So, but moving on, Tiberius or Dirk, did you guys have a show that was like?
I don't know if it was a show
or moments.
Well, when this started, right? I mean, this started at a very opportune time. Talking in Station started at a very opportune time with the escalation to what became World War B or the Casino War, whatever word you want to use for it. There was a lot of available player-driven narrative content and things like that that we were able to engage in on the show, and obviously that was. It was a big moment in Eve for a number of reasons. But anytime that you have those kind of big player generated things, typically wars, but even things regarding something big going on in the markets or something like that, is the time that shows like this really do well. So I don't really have one, but I would say that during that World War B Casino War time frame, a lot of those shows and the people who came on to represent the various sides in that were among my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the most memorable ones for me was I was at FanFest, and this was last year. This was the height of World War B, so I wasn't on the show myself, but I heard while I was out there that Vince Dragon had come onto the show. And it was 3:00 in the morning, and I was eating a noni sub, trying to get it down. I was like hoping that I had enough data on my phone to listen to the recording of the show while I was there to hear it, because I just suddenly all these big people were on the show during this war and were giving their perspective on it, and the perspectives were really interesting. So that was a memorable evening for me as far as the show in the last year's gone.
Shoot.
If it's allowed, can I add the interview you did with the Big Red Boat, which was amazing?
Yeah, actually, credit to you for pointing out that Boat would be a good interview, and he really was. It's very very interesting, layered guy, and it brought a lot of dimension to him. That one got like 2,000 listens and or more, and a lot of feedback. People were kind of moved by that one. The Matani interview itself was really good as well. And that's the interview I always wanted to have, where I could say, all right, I know you're the Matani, but come on, what's it like? And we really got a little bit past it.
What's it like being you, man?
Yeah, man. Like, what's it like donning the red shirt? But we got past it. He was still, a little bit of his formal self but it was fine, because that's really what the interview called for. It's like, what are some of the issues that someone at your position kind of faces?
And the one that where Apothony was teaching us how to actually control a room, that was really good too.
Which one was that?
The one where we had a full house. There was just so many people on the show. You had invited too many guests, and it was just about to get very chaotic, as it had been doing a few times before that. But at that time, Apothony was trying to point out to us, maybe if you guys try to X up before actually replying to each other and talking over each other, this would maybe work a little bit better. And it actually did. It was very, very good.
Pothny, you've watched the show probably, and you were on a few episodes. Is there anything that stands out for you, or is it all a blur?
I, for someone who's involved in Eve Media to the extent I am, I don't actually read or watch or listen to a huge deal of it. But I tend to end up always watching Talking in Stations because I guess primarily because the guests you tend to have on are the people I want to spend my time listening to. Like in Eve, my general interest in Medium whatever is learning from someone that's a ton smarter than me. And there are a ton of people who are a lot smarter than me in many things. But Talking in Stations tends to have the subjects I'm interested in and the people I'm interested in listening to on more than most, if not all, other shows out there, which is why I tend to be more of a avid listener. And also, it's a format where it's not just people screaming at each other for a couple hours at a time. It's something where actually interesting discussion can occur.
Wow, you're not paid to say that either, but that's great to hear. Um, the yeah, that's kind of it's interesting because that's kind of what the whole thing was about, is to try to get to the news makers to actually say, "Hey, tell me the real thing," and it usually turned out to be different than what was out there, the pervasive knowledge and stuff. I found that out through a lot of writing. Whenever you ask the people, "Is it like this?" Even the worst people aren't as bad as they sound. Um, and some of the stuff you can cut through is great, and then you can actually surprise people by saying, "You know what? It looks like this, but it's not." The Olivia thing was the Olivia scandal or whatever was that sort of a thing where you thought everybody just kind of went along, and then somebody asked the right question, and then when you really pressed, you realized it wasn't anything like it was presented to be, and it turned out to be a big, pity scandal. So that was uncovered. But for me, it was the lighter moments of the shows were the best part. And one of the things that comes to mind always is Ashtarothi, who provided many, many, many great moments, uh, was talking to Nystrick about Pokemon. I know it's not Eve, but for me, that was like one of the highlights. I honestly felt like we hit the right level of enthusiasm. Only it was about Pokemon. That was the problem. But also having Vince on with Grath, because they have a very old relationship. And in that show, we really talked to them about the relationship between PL and NC and how strong that bond was and where was it, who was it. And it really was them. And so it was pretty clear that NCPL is unified through those two people. And it was good to have them both on at the same time. And you could tell by the way they talked with each other, joking back and forth, Both guys are usually somewhat serious, and it was interesting. It was super interesting. But there have been a lot of great moments. I think talking about the nature, I think with Steve Mesner, who's from PC Gamer, or is it In Game? I forget where he's from. He's editor there. And we had him on, and he was terrific talking about the nature of role play. And are you putting on a face to be able to act like somebody else, or are you actually taking off a mask and allowing you to be yourself when you role play? Great stuff. I always wanted to come back to that topic. And we also talked with Celine about new players and Carneros, who's a great guy, just about, players, because that's kind of what we're interested in and why we do all this stuff. But
That's where the stories come from.
yeah, and that's the thing I will always say. It doesn't matter. The statistics don't matter. It's definitely about the story. And so that's what we always tried to get, is the actual story. Right. Well, that's all I have for this, except later on, actually, I should do it now. We're going to make some changes to the show. It's still going to go on for Hopefully another
So
year.
now that we've talked about the last year, guess what? It's all friggin' changing.
Yeah. So forget all
That's
that.
it. You're all sacked. We're getting new people in.
All of you, click off right now. You're fired.
Was a great show. It had a great formula. We're going to get rid of it all. No, the changes that are going to be are the show is actually going to continue pretty much exactly the same as it's been, but we're going to add Apothny, a lot more. He's going to be a regular host like Tiberius, and hopefully we'll get kind of a combination of people who are constantly digging up news and digging up stories and finding out stuff and just having like the best news reporting we can have. We also want to do deep topic issues like we've been doing, and so we're going to have we're going to continue to do that with a mixture of news. So that will be great.
It sounds like more effort. You're saying there's going to be more effort.
Yeah. Well, what that is bringing in really good people that can fill some space, and people who have the right tone and the right amount of knowledge, and they're and definitely the experience. And I've been around a while. Dirk's been around a while. Dirk's showing up more often. We hope he keeps coming. He's welcome anytime. That seat's
So hard,
his.
man. So hard. It's like
it's
if,
rough.
if this show were like on a Wednesday in Australian time zone, it probably wouldn't be as hard.
I know.
The day after.
We may push it 1 hour. That's being discussed, and it looks like it might happen, and that would be pretty good. So then it would be a little more sleep time, which would be nice. I think that's the difference, by the way, that 1/2 hour. Excuse me. All right. So I think the show's going forward. It looks like it's going to be a second year of Talking in Stations. Thank you all for showing up and supporting the show in one way or another, either by participating in chat, by listening to it when it's released in podcast form. Definitely all the feedback is great. It counts every time we get a compliment. We put it in that little bank of energy that keeps us going. Financially, for the people who helped out, thank you. You restored the idiotic move of not looking at my Amazon account, because I didn't realize that 2 hours every week and the demand that was there of thousands of listens was going to add up to so much. So thank you for fixing that error. That's just about come to an end. I think I will keep the Patreon going so that we can start to upgrade the show in certain ways. And I want to also make sure that we thank McLeod again he's now pushing all the buttons, and that allows us to do more talking. So yeah, here's to a second year.
From causing technical errors like in the past.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, so thank you guys all for a great year, everybody that's listening to this, and hopefully we're going to have a second year with even better content for you. Again, 110 hours is nothing to sneeze at. It's a lot of effort from amazing people, guests and panel included. All right. One other announcement I wanted to make is that I was thinking of this. Again, I'm floating this idea out like I did the CSM interview idea, and I'm looking for some feedback. But I was thinking of doing a space tourism show. And that would either be on right around the same time as Talking in Stations, and that would really just be me actually playing the game, flying to a system that is historically a system of importance. And as I fly there, try not to die, but also talk a little bit about what happened in this area and why it's important and stuff like that. And we'll always start out like in Jita so that you can see the entire path or something like that. It's just an idea of taking people around New Eden and do some sightseeing, and also put some player history in there so that you realize that every one of these systems has a history. Some of them have amazing histories. So I thought that'd be pretty cool. Thanks. And I think now we can move on to news. We got a lot of really cool news. So, well, I guess first headline is CSM votes are underway.
Yay!
I said this.
Away.
I said this yesterday, and I got to say it one more time. I don't even tell people when I vote, or I haven't voted yet. I'll tell you that. But when I vote, one of the top two, of course, Vince will be one of the top two, maybe the first, because he's our leader. But I think Satonia is going to be very high on my list, so I'm putting him up there as number 2. I can't imagine why he's not, topping a lot of these lists. He seems to be kind of the 5th or 6th slot, but the guy is brilliant. He knows this game inside and out. And just, that's I hate to endorse people, but I have to. I think it's a real shame if for some reason he didn't get the votes that he really deserves. Okay. You guys have anything on CSM?
Yep, I voted on all my
I
accounts.
voted on all my accounts. I think I
Yeah.
voted for. I had a ballot of 7 in the end. I didn't do the full 10.
Oh, you
It was a
didn't?
difficult choice this year.
Yeah.
Like thinking of that, it was really, really tough.
Like
Um,
I hold the people I vote for to quite a high standard. So I only vote for people I would tell other people to vote for. Is my rule. If I'm not willing to tell someone else to vote for you, I won't vote for you.
The people you need to get a hold of is people like Marshmallow that's been doing the whole zombie mining, because they have 25 plus accounts, all of them.
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
There was what was it? One of our guys complained about having to. Oh, I'm not going to go vote across all 20 accounts I have. First of all, it's like you have 20 accounts. The second one, it goes. It does save you preferences, by the way.
you really want to lobby those people because they're like one-person corporations.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. Actually, funny you bring up Marshmallow and Aerox and Opus Magnum. These are people who've been around the show a while, and we just love seeing them on there. We get enthusiastic when we see them in the chat channels and when they hang out in Discords. Yeah. So you know what's interesting about CSM, and we can move on, is the list came out from Imperium and it wasn't completely filled out, and it was only like 6 or 7 people, so there was 3 left, and the idea was these are the ones that we care about. After that, you can vote your heart's content. Well, people don't want to do that, it turns out, and they complained and said we want a full ballot because we don't want to think about this. We want you to tell us how to think. And it's very interesting how people respond to that.
I think that's
That's a great part of the goon mindset.
I think it's any mindset. I think it's any mindset where people want to do the right thing, but they don't want to be taxed mentally to do it.
I mean, this is probably a topic for a show all on its own. Like how engaged is the wider Eve player base with the CSM? And I'm always a proponent that sits there and goes, "Well, it's not really," which is both a shame and I think just systematic. I think that's
If you
my
put it
worst.
in context, Tibbs, right? If we've only had these shows media-wise for about 2 years, and we've only really gotten good groundwork from the new era of media for the last year or two also, right? Then we should expect to see more CSM engagement from the voters the next year or two, right?
I mean, I still think majority of people in Eve log in, do their 1 hour of whatever it is they do, and log off again, and don't touch anything else, don't read anything else, don't care about anything else.
I think you're wrong. I think the meta is more important today to more players than it used to be. I think there's a lot more knowledge about the fact that there's more to the game than just logging in and doing your things.
I mean, to give you an example, I experienced at least my point personally earlier this week, where I discovered, because I started a new job like a month ago, and I discovered I was talking about the fact that I was going on a trip to Iceland to my boss, and said, "Yeah, no, it's all been booked up, blah blah blah." And there was this guy, and he was sat a few foot away, and as soon as I said Iceland, going for a gaming event, he kind of turned around slowly in his chair and sort of gave me a sideways look. I was like, "You're going to Iceland at the beginning of April?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "You play EVE Online, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, how did you know that?" He goes, "Because I play it." Oh, got really quiet, Doug.
Soon you will be recognized if you start talking in public for your voice alone, right?
Well, but this is the thing, right? I was like, "Oh, who are you?" Blah blah blah. And he's, in some little corporation, and he goes, "Yeah, I just log in and I carry a rat." And I go, "Oh, well, I'm an NC and I'm Tiberius Stargazer," and it's just literally no response at all. And my EP just went from like this big, "Yeah, I'm space important," to about half an inch, like just like, "Oh, okay, this guy literally has no idea who I am."
Anytime you say e-ping, it just always sounds small.
Oh, wow.
Maybe it's like the lowercase part of the, I don't know, but it never, yeah.
Well, but the point I'm trying to make is that things that get a lot of viewers, right? Things like the NT, the whole tournament stuff. This has really been growing for the last 2 years, and the people that are part of that are also part of the extended meta, right? So people like Apotheny is very well known face from the tournament stuff and all that content. And all of these things are going to consolidate and spill into each other. And we're going to see growth in the EVE meta in the next few years. And then more people will be aware of who people like Tiberius Stargazer is and what the CSM is.
Yeah. So,
Am I,
you know,
am I coming through better now? Or?
there we go. We're good now.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So
we could probably do, well, obviously we could probably do a series of shows on the CSM, right? I mean,
we could, but we're not.
No. Well, no, I'm not saying that. But like there's so much you could talk about, right? I mean, you could talk about the whole player engagement thing. You could talk about the fact that there's way too many damn candidates, like all of those things. Yeah. That also feeds into engagement. When you've got that many candidates, I'm not sure that that's necessarily representative of, like, you would almost think that if you got 64 people that want to run for this thing, that it would extend further out into the care factor of what people think about it. But I'm not sure that truly represents it like that.
But that's why you should be so happy that we are seeing the whole political parties thing kicking off a little bit. And maybe that's actually the future of the CSM, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do hope that we, see more stuff like that, right? Just in terms of trying to engage more people, in those areas, where they're either not represented or really they're just not engaged. But then again, we've been talking about it goes much further than that, than just the CSM, right? Because you've got people who, like, even when you look at the viewers for today's show, right? These are the same viewers of other shows. They're the same people that listen to other podcasts. They're the same people that read what's going on out there, in terms of media covered content or bloggers or what have you, right?
And they're a large part of the show, by the way. I want to point that out, that they're a huge part of the show. They're at least half the show, as Marcia was saying earlier, and I totally agree with that.
But it's the content creators, right? What is it that?
Hold on, Caleb. I took it away from Dirk. I want to give it back to him.
Well, no. What I want to say is that we've been talking for years, about the fact that just changes to the game or something else, knowing about being kind of attached to the social the social or information aspect of the game is kind of a minority of players in general.
That's what I mean with the Siegel was categorizing that type of player, the ones that are actually engaged in or responsible for creating content and making sure that there are organizations and stuff like that. And that's a very special kind of player, especially in the past, because the barrier of entry to that level of gameplay, what some people call the meta, was really high. But it's not that high anymore because of things like technology, because we are reaching something that smells a little bit like critical mass. So if you want to do stuff like that, you don't have to invest the massive hours that you used to.
Yeah, you're right, Dirk. Maybe we should do a deconstruction show. I think it's super interesting for us. But we have a lot of news to cover, and let's move on if we have nothing else. We want to talk about release 119.3.
Yay!
What do we got?
So a bunch of tweaks from what we did last year, which we talked about last week. Don't know if anybody wants to recap those over again.
Broadly speaking, it's a bunch of UI UX improvements. Like if there's one way to sum up this thing, it's a ton of little to medium scale UI UX things that just make everyone's lives a million times happier and less frustrating.
Do you see any
the booster ozone and strong going into ships and SMAs thing, the hotkeys for drones and fighters thing.
Oh, thank God.
That all that kind of stuff isn't stuff that necessarily is like, oh my God, there's this whole big new feature, the whole new way to play the game. It's our old way to play the game. It's all the same, but now the way we interact with the game is just so much smoother, which is a huge and important part of game design.
And the biggest change in this patch, apart from a few of the little tweaks and graphical tweaks and things like that, is the new the sort of revamp of the scanning interface, because that's getting a lot of love in this update that's coming in. It's got a brand new color scheme, so everything, because there's been a lot of feedback since they changed it. I think it was probably in Citadel, roundabout Citadel way. So that's like nearly a year ago now. There's a lot of feedback, so they've changed a lot of the colors. They've added some new animations. They've changed icons. And there's even some new sounds, so you get a bit more of a visceral feedback when something's actually happening. The control interface is a little bit better. The sites now show difficulty as well, which blew my brain. Like you can actually now see how difficult particular sites are without having to warp to them. And for scanners as well, there's this whole new double click thing. Like beforehand, you used to like maneuver your camera so you look on the horizontal plane and suggest it, and then move it to the vertical plane and then move it around. Now you just double click it and it does it, and it moves the camera for you. That's great. It's just those little touches which are fantastic.
Well, Apoth kind of skipped over a little something there, or you just kind of mentioned it, which I didn't even realize until last night. I mean, we talked for like, I don't know, over an hour last night, about this release. There's actually quite a bit in this, and one of those little things that he mentioned, is that currently right now, right, you can't have anything except like ammo and other forms of charges that are that are in a ship that you're putting in a ship maintenance bay. Going forward, what was it? Liquid ozone, you'll now be able to have in there. Was it Straunt?
Remnants of the cans in cans problem. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Because it ties into that, right? It's like, why don't CCP just take that last step and say volume and internal volume are related, so you cannot have more than that, and then just say all cans can be in all cans and containers.
Well, yeah, right. This isn't exactly related to that as much as it is way back in the day when you could put an Iteron 5 into a carrier or something like that, and it was filled with anything.
It was used to package stuff, right? It had more volume inside than it had in the container itself. It was stupid, and it's the same old fucking problem. And CCP should take that last step, right? So we can have cans in cans, and they make sense.
Right, but this isn't. What I'm saying is this is not related to that. It's related to the fact that they stopped you being able to carry anything. They didn't want you to be able to pack these ships filled with stuff and use it like you would right. But now they've just put a couple things back that you can, so liquid ozone.
It doesn't make any sense really, right? It doesn't make sense that you can't use it as a whole. If it can contain that ship, then why can it not contain the stuff
that's in it?
It makes no sense.
Because
it's a nonsensical balance.
But it's just a choice thing. It's not the same as putting a can into a can, because that was that is a technical issue. This is just a choice.
That was what was nerfed, right? The reason it was nerfed was because the volume inside was becoming bigger than the volume on the outside. So that's why you did the cans in cans, and that's why you were disallowed to do the tiered levels of cans within cans, because it was a thing before they nerfed it. That means that the actual engine, the code, can actually have cans within cans as far in depth as you like, because I think they went down to like 10 degrees of depth in cans within cans, at least back in the day when people were using it to maximize the containers.
But anyways, I mean, that was just another little small piece of a lot of other big. I mean, obviously in here, we've also got the change to the panic module on Rorqual, the change to excavator drones, and the reduction in yield to the Rorqual. There's actually a lot in this patch.
And one thing that you predicted.
What was that?
Said that one of the things that would actually help in the balance is if they increased the gap, the spread out of roids in belts, so it would take longer to actually reach the entire belt. And that's exactly what we got in the comments. That's kind of funny.
That's one of the remnants of the game. I really haven't seen it in a long time. Was the little crescent asteroid belt, right? Like if ever you zoom out when you're in an asteroid belt, it looks like a moon, and all the asteroids kind of do a half circle around the beacon.
Isn't that because they're depleted that you don't get to see that?
Yeah, probably in high sec, but if you go to a brand new belt, that's what it looks like. And it's really funny that that's been that way a long, long time. And the
Well, I mean,
video
not all belts are like that. I mean,
well, well, I'm talking about like system belts, like the ones that you go to
yeah,
for.
yeah. I mean, not all of them. I mean, if
They're not?
out in LSEC, they're not like that.
Nope, they're not.
So, I mean, some belts are, and then some belts are, dispersed, differently. I mean,
Oh, my bad. Well, I always thought that was interesting. It's been that
put
way for
that
a
in your
long time.
Matterall guide to mining.
And Jin Chan's comment, no one knows.
That's an interesting inside joke at INN. We're going to be doing a lot of tutorials, and one of the things I volunteered to do was the Matterall complete guide to mining, and
Also to tip.
it had to be the Matterall one because I wanted to. I always read my first influence in Eve was Halada's complete guide to mining, which I thought was brilliant effort of like 70 pages of this is how you become a miner from beginning to end and what you need to know. And I read that thing twice, so I thought like, wow, I've really come full circle if I can do a Matterall's guide to mining. Except I don't know that much about mining, but it'll happen. Um, the thing about that, it's just been that way for a long time. They increased the grid size so you could see more while you're in space, participate with more things in a bigger area. And they didn't really adjust asteroid belts for that. So maybe that's what's going on. They're going to spread asteroids out.
Yep.
All right. Anything else on this stuff? There's a lot of UI, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of UI stuff. The patch notes are extensive. So they're up now. So go check them out. The patch will be hitting on Tuesday at the normal time. But yeah, certainly it's a big one for scanners this time around. Interestingly, the red cross is being removed from the damage control and replaced with a green cross.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was a joke. Is that a green cross?
No.
Isn't that a pot shop?
Well, the green cross to me always represents pharmacies, but now suddenly I need to know where you live.
Venice Beach, man.
But yeah, apparently
over.
there's a section in the Geneva Convention which protects the Red Cross and the Red Crescent from being reproduced in other ways beyond its function as representing humanitarian aid or medics and things like that.
CCP's no impersonation clause.
Yeah, exactly. But this only came to light in gaming a few months back when I think there was a first-person shooter. I can't remember which one it was. No. It was first-person shooters had to do it originally, but there was a big drama around Prison Architect, if anybody's ever played that one, where they had the med packs in there, and they had to change all the med packs from the Red Cross to the to something else because the Red Cross wrote a letter saying, "Yeah, you can't use that. You need to change it, or we're going to sue you." So CCP's obviously heard this news as well and done the same thing. I thought it was quite interesting. A little bit of world politics seeping into the games there.
Very interesting. So a couple other interesting notes that happened. Sorry about my voice. I guess my cold is not yet recovered completely. But Graph got popped pretty bad, right? Lost a pod of nearly 3 billion. So the story goes, and he explained this on Open Comms. You want to watch that. It's pretty funny. At least this part of it was. The rest of it was very funny too, but in a different kind of way. And kind of a, but he was cruising around, and he uses the best equipment for his pod. So he has really high-end plugins, as you can see. But he got trapped outside of a wormhole. He jumped into a room full of Imperium. Said, I think I better moonwalk out of here. Turned around, tried to go back out the wormhole, and it collapsed and spat him back out. So there he turns back around as he tries to sneak out. And
Bob says no.
All these guys blast him. Yeah, basically Bob said, stay there. So he got killed and lost a very expensive pod, which is kind of funny.
When did that happen?
That was last night.
No.
Graph always flies around with big things in his head. Like he loves flying Marauders and all that kind of shit. And he's a rich man, so Like that's just who Grath is. If you catch a Grath pod, it's gonna be blingy.
Yeah, he doesn't spare an expense there.
I mean, the pod kill actually happened yesterday.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Actually, it happened pretty much while I believe it happened right before the show open comm started, so it was very fresh. Also, the judge got a huge. He got whacked too. I think apparently he was flying his ship gate to gate and ended up getting caught.
Well, this is the paparazzi section.
Ripper Widow. There you go.
Yes, this is paparazzi. Yes, here they are without their with their
What
guard
did all the
down.
famous people do?
Right. So yeah, so that's some of the stuff that's going on in Eve. Do we have any wars or anything going on? It's so flippant, right? Like that used to be the what we do.
Uh,
But not
There's
much going on
something
right now.
brewing on in Solitude at the moment. I'm trying to find some information out about it, but it's and I know there's a couple of people trying to research into it, but there's something brewing up down in Solitude, and I'm not entirely sure what yet.
Yeah,
But
that's
The
watch this
current
space, I
PL
guess.
deployment is a bloodbath. I'm not sure if you'd call it a war, but good lord, is there a lot of fighting and dying of large fleets going on?
where at.
Down in the south, down Catch area.
Gotcha.
Yeah, last night there was supposed to be a big fight. Didn't materialize, but we're about to see one.
Yeah, no, we're getting like 2 or 3 big fights, maybe 1 to 3 big fights every single week, quite consistently, and a ton of smaller stuff going on. It's really good down there at the moment.
Are they local to Catch region or are they happening?
So like
Wicked Creek.
PL are down in Curse at the moment. There's obviously PL, like basically wherever PL live, they will every adjacent region comes under fire. Like we just try and kill everything we possibly can. But a lot of it's going on in Catch and that general Curse Catch. You know, the usual. You know, somebody goes down to burn Provi or burn Catch at least once a year.
Right.
Or if you listen to what Brave is saying, it's basically PL stalking Brave as they move around the map.
I mean, we just want friends.
Never seen that before.
I know, right?
I think we know how this one ends.
Yeah, I seem to be getting the sense of deja vu around this somewhere.
Well, I don't know. Brave is different.
We just
Yeah.
want to play spaceships with them. You know, new players. We want to play the game with them to make sure they're having fun.
Right. That's when a dog is barking at you and you're like, he just wants to talk. No, I think he wants to
Right
bite
before
your
it
leg.
bites your finger off, yeah.
He's not talking. He wants to bite me. But yeah, the what's interesting is Brave is still around, first of all, but second of all, there's 2,300, which is a very sizable group. And now they're back in Catch, and it's really interesting to see how they've kind of come full circle themselves in their own narrative and ended up back in the land where they were burnt out of before in dramatic fashion, and seem to be, allied again with Hero Coalition members, which was their coalition before. Test.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, same region, same allies, with an added bonus of CO2 down there now. So, it's kind of an interesting situation. Also, it looks like the judge was flying a Panther, if I'm not mistaken, and which is a ship that can actually jump, right? Covert ops.
If there's a Sino lit somewhere within range,
That's true. Must not have had a Sino. So he had a slow boat at the poor
can't
man.
jump on its own.
He got caught, it looks like. So it's kind of like, what? That's a very puzzling kill. I should say also, Pothny has an article that's coming out on the change of T3. Is it out already, by the way? On
It's
Carthage
been
Settings?
out for like an hour or two. There's currently a whole bunch of interesting comments and feedback on the associated Reddit thread and on the article itself. And I'm very much looking forward to sitting down to this massive one by John June after the show and writing out a big ol' response to his response.
So tell us about that article.
So, I was at dinner last night, and currently, because of when we had that little leak of what the summer changes were going to be, you know, the T3 cruiser rebalance and the chat system. You know, obviously, T3 cruisers are the spaceship part of Eve, which is the Tendai part, which is the part I tend to pay the most attention to, and enjoy most. And I just been thinking about the ways that CCP could go with it, because I think it's very easy to go into, oh, this needs to be nerfed to 5%. Oh, it needs less armor HP. Oh, it needs to be able to shoot this subsystem. Oh, this is overpowered because it's got an optimal bonus. Like, I think that's all very rebalance ideas, right? And it was called a rebalance, which totally makes sense. But I think within rebalance, you've got to kind of take a step back before you get to the rebalance part and look at what the ship is intending to be, or what the ship should be and where it should be in the meta. So that's why I try to discuss the initial design principles, and then instead of proposing a rebalance of the subsystem system, which is an interesting phrase to put together, I considered what we might look at in terms of a redesign where we follow the advent of the T3 destroyer system. So instead of having a one of 3 modes, it would be a one of 6 modes, and you can see all the suggestions in the article itself. But I wanted to look at the discussion from kind of a bigger step back, and then follow that through to the endpoint, rather than just going into, oh, this needs less DPS, oh, this needs less tank, blah 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 blah.
Because the original design plan for T3s when they came out was to be the high-end cruiser that was infinitely flexible. Like you wouldn't need 4 or 5 ships to do different jobs. You just have the one ship and change the subsystems out. It didn't quite hit that, I don't think, because of rigs and things like that.
Yeah, well, there's rigs, and then with the subsystems as well. Subsystems are a choice you make before you undock, right?
That's
And
right.
further, subsystems are at the point where, personally, I have a couple T3s for different jobs. I even have a couple Proteuses that I do for different things with different subsystems, because that's just kind of, it turns out the easiest way to do it. So there's no flexibility or versatility on grid. And one of the things I strongly believe about Odd and Eve PvP, if we want to get away from some of the things we decry, like N+1, and the things like where fleet fights are a lot of time don't happen, is that less needs to be known about how the fight is going to occur before you get on grid, because that is what allows you to decide whether or not to take the fight. And if there is more of a gray area of information, then that gives both sides more wiggle room in terms of whether or not they believe they can take the fight correctly or incorrectly. And what that means is we can't do it by just changing ship balance, and you can't do that by a lot of things, because it just means that the spy meta game covers that. You know what modules they're flying, you know what ships they're flying. It's when you start putting ideas of they have multiple decisions to make on grid, both from an FC perspective and from a fleet perspective, and when fleets have more moving parts, is when the complexity reaches a point where it's going to matter how you fly on the day as to your power level. Currently, if we look at specifically at T3s or, like, I don't know, Maelstrom or Hurricane fleets, they are very simple to understand. They have an attack value, they have a tank value, and all the good FCs about there can go, okay, they've got approximately this many, this many to win, or I can't go and fight, and that's just done. End of argument, right? I think that when we have more complex ships, and especially the higher end ships for the end game PvP, where you have more decisions and more skill on grid, that's where more engaging and enjoyable gameplay can happen for the older players, and also it can be something that younger players can aspire to. This is something that CCP have been working on in terms of, for example, what they try to do with the T3 destroyers, that mode change, giving you an ability to swap between the modes and manage them well to show more skill. And then also on the super carrier and Titan level, the new Doomsdays are skill shots, for example. They completely rebalanced fighters, not to just be big drones, but to require skill to use, and rewarding people who practice it and use it, to the point where if you are better at using fighters, you can reliably beat a larger force with a smaller force, where in some cases with fleets, even if you're the best pilots in the world and they're just kind of average, numbers is all that's matter, because it increases the skill ceiling and the efficacy ceiling for the ship through decision and piloting, not by this ship is just better than that ship.
Let me widen up the subject a bit. And that is looking at that, because they also released a lot of UI changes, which really gives drones a lot of key commands. So now people can actually start moving in the direction of controlling their drones with keys. What is it? Actions per second or something? Actions per minute?
Actions per minute.
Yeah, that's a measure of how fast people are typing on the keys, the keystrokes, shortcuts, or whatever, getting their things to do what they need to do. It comes from other games like StarCraft, which Apotheny knows a lot about. So that, coupled with the idea of giving people more to do in the game, like, is that
away from EFT and spreadsheet and more into actual skills and what is happening right now in your grid or on the market or whatever it is, right? And this has been needed a long time, because it's been so much preparational and perfect knowledge, and we need to get away from that.
That's what I was going to ask.
knowledge and logistics are very, very, very important, and they should always be a very important part. But I think that we are currently on the side of where that is even too much, despite how important it should be.
So it still needs more gameplay rather than preparation.
Yeah, and what we were saying about I just completely lost my point. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And
The point is that
that's
if
the important.
CCP then shifts to the next part of
Oh.
that, which is scarcity and bottlenecks, then we might actually get to a really good point. I think something interesting that came up in the open comms last night was that Grass was actually saying that fatigue is actually a good thing because it actually makes space bigger. And this is exactly the type of bottleneck. It's just how it's been designed that might actually not be optimal because it doesn't really change anything on the ecosystem side. It's only changing something on the strategic side.
Yeah. So, and then there's 2 points I'd like to make going off of what's just been said. The first being the APM. Pretty much in Eve can never become as big as a thing as it is in, like a RTS like StarCraft or the Twitch COD shooty games that I don't really play, because we are limited by, we have one server take a second, and even with all the best hardware in the world, that's unlikely to ever be reduced, if at all, by not very much. So some level of it is good, but we're never going to go to that extreme of, like, your MOBAs or your RTSs, and I think that Eve would suffer if we did go too much in that direction. And then the other idea is why do I keep forgetting what I'm going to talk about?
Just the point that you're making about the T3, just the point that you can see a fleet of T3s and you don't actually know what's the setting, right? You don't necessarily know how it's fit because it's no longer a cookie cutter.
If you see them in a setting, you can guess what they are. Like, if you see a big blob of T3s and Nullsec, you know exactly how they're fit. So it's not necessarily not knowing what they can do, because if the mode system came out, then you would still know all the modes they can do and switch between.
But you don't necessarily know the exact composition of that fleet. It could be a mixed fleet.
So
you could have
giving more
Tech 2
options
rigs
for
instead of
ways
Tech
to
1 and stuff, right?
engage. More options for ways to engage means that they might be planning on kiting you. They might see your fleet and react in a way that they see to different fleets. Like, one of the big things, if we look at so I want to bring up StarCraft here. If you have a Marine Mortar Medevac Bull, that is an army with specific abilities and specific skills. But the way in which it gauges different force varies massively. The way it deals fighting a Protoss Death Bull versus fighting a Zerg Death Bull or whatever changes drastically, and because it can engage in multiple ways, makes it an interesting and dynamic thing to fight, both as the person using it and the person fighting it.
And also, apparently, if you consider things like the fittings, right? If there's a bigger gap or more steps between Tech 1, Tech 2, metas, faction, and so on and so forth, then the composition is also going to have a huge impact on the value of the fleet. So the ISCOR would actually be able to change a lot, right?
I'm not sure about that, because when you go into what you're actually fitting on the ships, that's again a decision made before you undock, right? So that's a thing that can be known with perfect information.
Yeah, but the value would change, right? So the ISCORs, the composition would change dramatically.
The ISCOR is easy to change with T3s just by what materials it takes to make them.
Yeah,
but I'm thinking more the cost efficiency, right? And this might actually matter more in the future if we get more of this scaling.
And the reason I brought this up and wanted to expand on this was, just Goon Things says I prefer 2009 Eve to 2017, and I kind of do too. And I don't know if it's just nostalgia because I was newer then, or if it was a different game. It had a niche audience.
It was a different time. Look, it was just a different time in the game, right? I mean, when you took that out longer, right? I mean, it ultimately went out to things like the Wrecking Ball. It went out to, Sentry drone assist carrier groups and Dominixes and, all that kind of stuff, right? To where skill mattered less. In 2009, people's skill points were lower. Their wealth was lower. Once you got out to so you could have groups out there where you could have quality beat quantity at that time, or at least there was kind of an offset to it, right? But it ultimately ran a course where everybody had the same things, and now it was just pure quantity.
Yeah,
So, I
because
mean, a
if
lot
you,
of
if
these
you think
things that
about
come down to skill are bringing back some differentiating factors that existed earlier in the game just because of the time of the game.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at so if we go back to the time of Eve, and I wasn't here then, so this could be complete bullshit, but I'm gonna go with it anyway and possibly not.
That's
Is
brave.
I'll
when
correct you.
so PL were really getting started around the time of Hellcats and Ahax, that kind of era-ish, where PL was a smaller group but had much more money and flew more expensive doctrines compared to the vast larger groups who flew less expensive doctrines but had more dudes. And you had that cool few versus many, skill versus the unwashed masses. But then the large groups skilled into T3s. They all skilled into Dreads. They all skilled into their own supercat fleets. So it wasn't having this more expensive stuff and with doing theory crafting with it that other people couldn't do because they didn't have the ships, which it was then. Now everybody can do that. Everybody has all the information. The largest organizations in the game have uh, farmed and built themselves up so they can fly the highest end game stuff with as many of their members as possible.
Yeah. I
It's
think
really about assets creep, right? The fact that every year,
it's also skill point creep.
yeah, skill points is a minor thing compared to the bottleneck of the actual value in space, right? The things that used to matter no longer matters because it's been basically material or raw creeping for years and years. So there's no longer a scarcity in it, and
Or
CCP
transfer.
has been designing away from scarcity the last 6-7 years. And before that, it used to be very scarce. Some of the things that you wanted, if you wanted your high-end meta or you wanted your Tech 2 stuff, that was expensive because it had not creeped yet. So you really had to pay through the nose to get access to any of that.
Well, that's a good point, and I think it's not just that well, it is creeping, but why is it creeping? Do people just find better ways of
Because the
earning money,
destruction
or is it
is not high enough, right?
destruction may not be high
If you
enough,
go
right?
far
But
enough
also,
back,
I think there's a lot of wealth transfer that happens because people leave the game,
yeah, but wealth
and
is usually counted in ISK, right? Not necessarily
I
in
mean,
assets. Assets are not
the
considered.
scarcity argument. All you have to do is look at the current state of pirate faction battleships. They're farming the
That's a
fuck out of
good
them.
example.
There are so many, and their power level at the price they used to be was pretty reasonable, right? But because they are so available, and because you can whelp them and just grab another set because they exist, even if they do become a bit more expensive, means that they are massively oppressive to the rest of the ship line, just because they are so cheap and available.
The
And
oppression,
it's the problem. The point is that with things like that, if there's only like a 2 to 7% excess of available assets, then that will creep very fast monthly, right? It becomes a doubling thing. It's going to double every 10 months or something like that if it's just about 7% surplus each month, right? So this is the thing that CCP does not seem to have an eye on, that very small percentages, when they start compounding, it becomes a massive excess.
Interesting topic. We'll pick it up next week because I think I always love exploring the beginning of Eve compared to the middle of Eve compared to the 2013 Eve all the way up to now. It's really interesting. The game has so many eras, and the population has come and gone. I think that this astounding number came out. I'll leave you with this: that when CSM 6 was around, 9 million people had already come through Eve. I forget when that is, what year that was, but that was at least. I mean, we're at CSM 12 now, so it wasn't every year. They had 2 per year at one point, so it's hard to say those are years, but basically about 5 years ago.
2011, yeah.
Yeah,
2011, 2012.
Yeah, so that's a lot of people that have come through the place, a lot of wealth that was generated and left behind for other people or whatever else. But anyway, I love comparing those eras because it's really interesting. But I do want to run out to do a FanFest, real quick FanFest check-in. You guys, who's going to FanFest? You guys X up in the chat if you're going to FanFest, so you guys can all look for each other there. And looking forward to it. Any highlights you're excited about? Okay, we'll move on from FanFest.
I really, really hope. I don't think it's going to happen, but I really want to see the rule set for the next Alliance tournament so I can start churning out comp design ideas because, like, that's like my favorite thing to do, man. Just pushing out different comp ideas to the AT. Oh my god, it's so fun.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, FanFest. Hopefully, yeah, I'm not going, but I mean, I hope we see, more of the roadmap, right? I mean, more information being put out there.
Yeah.
There's been some stuff that's been leaked. Is that all of kind of the big announcement?
Oh, I hope it's not all that's being announced. If that's all that got leaked.
Apothi's having one of those moments where his kids come into screen and he's like pushing them off. Did you guys see that video?
From the BBC.
If you haven't seen it yet, it's worth watching. And then the wife flies in and grabs the kids and drags them out.
See, I feel like the dad could have been way more sympathetic. Excuse me a moment, I need to take the kids out, and like it would have been fine. But
oh, you freak out.
I kind of feel like he wasn't wearing trousers, so he couldn't do that.
The fact that he reached out the arm and was just like, no, go away. And then the mother comes in with a look of terror on her
for
face.
10 years, nothing has happened for me to have an interview for. This is my one chance.
Yeah, it was a pretty funny video. You can find it. It just came out a couple of days ago or last.
It's everywhere, man. It's everywhere.
Yeah. All right.
The other thing I'm looking forward to hearing about at FanFest, and it usually comes at the end, I think during the closing ceremonies, is what the dates for Vegas are going to be.
That's what you
Yep.
When is it coming back?
You know what? It's going to be my third time going. And for me, every year it becomes less and less about the actual event itself, but getting to catch up with, people that I spend a lot of time talking to, and don't get to see them face to face until we get to FanFest. And for me, that's the great thing, because it's, now it's just kind of, it's almost like old friends getting together and you catch up. And funny enough, we spend so little time actually talking about Eve itself, because you have all the presentation and things like that. It's just friends catching up with real life and what's been happening and what's been great in their years and what's been down in those particular years. And it's just a fantastic event for me in that sort of sense.
Yeah, there was an off chance I was going to make it this year. I've never been, but that wasn't going to happen. Yeah, maybe next year. I don't know if I'm still around. But look,
it's turning into a bit of a meme where I keep saying maybe I'll go to Vegas next year, and it doesn't happen.
We can meet in New York. But Otto Bismarck's going to be there. Noisy Gamer's going to be there. You, of course, and I think it should be. I think Caleb, are you going to go?
Yeah, we're going.
Yeah,
Riva
and you were going. Good, terrific. So it would be really fun to be there to meet everybody in person.
I'm waiting to bump into Noisy after the CSM elections announced, just to get his reaction, to see him go, it's full of no-set candidates again.
Noisy and I still talk, and he tells me the statistics, and we're looking at the horse race and stuff like that, and it's kind of exciting, although it's not down to one moment, it's down to like 30 days or whatever of the voting window, so it's not quite as exciting, but it is kind of interesting. And I will say Apothony's going to be there, and he's going to be there for Talking in Stations. So if you see him there, go and give him a pat on the back. Not very hard, but give him a pat on the back. Hopefully we'll actually call him during FanFest, and he can do, say hello from there, like Tiberius did at Eve London.
And you did at Vegas.
And I did at Vegas, right? I forgot. Thanks to you and Skeptic, who were holding down the fort. All right, I think that brings us to. Oh, I do want to say next week we're going to have Lady Scarlet on, and maybe we can
pin her down.
Yes, finally. I've been trying to get her on for a long time. She finally had some time. I want to get Minxie on here too. That might be the same show, and we may actually talk about. These are two women who have played the game for over a decade and are incredibly accomplished in the game. So it'd be great to have like them on at the same show. Or it may pan out to be an NC Dot show with Vince and Lady Scarlet here. We'll see what actually turns up. But next week will be a great show like this one. And so one thing I wanted to go to, and let me check the notes here. It's time for announcements.
Yay, my bad. I get to talk some more.
It's announcement time.
So just a quick update. There's like a whole bunch of meets before FanFest coming up in this month. Toronto having their monthly meetup today. They're celebrating Alpha X45, wherever he may be. Happy birthday to you. And a chance to win some Plex, and that's at the Amsterdam Brew House in their normal place. There's the Milwaukee meetup today as well. It's the 5th year that meet's been running. and that's at the Water Street Brewery, and that kicks off at 7 p.m. local time today. Then there's the Pittsburgh meetup at the Oliver Twist. I put Twitch, but it meant to be Twist. From 8 o'clock today. The New York City area meetup is on the 17th of March from 4 p.m. at the Peculiar Pub. That's a great name for a pub. I really want to go see that one. And then we get to March 25th, and there's 5 meets going on around the world. There's the annual North Texas Eve meet at Fuzzy's Taco Shop, Eve Glasgow, the Denver, Colorado monthly meetup, the DCVA NE area meetup, and the Houston monthly Eve meetup as well. That's all on the 25th of March. Make sure you keep an eye on Eve Meet if you want to find out more information on how to get to those events. And just last but not least, my boys over at EVNT are running the penultimate weekend of the Major League. This is the 3rd out of 4, and that starts tomorrow, and it's on the EVNT Twitch.
That New York City meetup on it's next Friday. That's St. Patrick's Day in New York. So that's so that's either going to be really fun for the people that are there or a complete and utter nightmare.
We're stuck.
Well, let's put it this way. If whichever bar the Eveners book out to descend on, they're probably going to be a bit happier because Evenodes generally tend to be very well-behaved drunks.
Well, Eve, sorry, I think there's a meetup this weekend in LA too. It's actually Pasadena, which is about an hour from LA Basin or whatever. And sometimes the Space Pope is there. It's usually put on by Lank from Cap Stable. It's a good little pub night if you're in the area. I like to attend that one too. Lady Scarlet will attend at some point. I haven't actually brought her there yet because she lives in the area. There's a lot of Eve players in the area. And Dunk Dinkle is in the area, and we thought about making a proper LA one that happens more closer to the beach, basically. So we're kind of flirting around with that idea.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Just as far as a future meet goes, I linked it in the chat channel. Eve Northeast is coming up. It's going to be in July, but the tickets are on sale for that. For people who are kind of in that area that want to come camping with nerds. It's kind of fun. It's a multi-day event, which is
what could be better
traveling for, and it's a good time.
That way, that outdoor smell actually makes sense.
Exactly. Showers not required. I mean, you can. But...
Well, why not? At least it's all in context there.
Yeah, it's a good freaking time. I'm going to tell you.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. You guys have any? I don't know. This is a little space for you to either plug things or talk about something you want to shout out, say hello to somebody, or I could just say, like, what do you guys hope that we get to this year? Like, what are you looking forward to?
FanFest. I'm looking forward to getting drunk at FanFest. That's pretty much what I'm looking forward to at the moment. It's only it's less than a month away now, so it's getting close.
Yeah, there's something I was trying to look up here, but it looks like Spectre Fleet is having an event. It looks like a big fight going on. So see if you can find out more information about that.
Yeah, there's a guy who's leaving the game and going out in style by sacrificing his Titan, and Spectre Fleet will be defending. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of people coming to kill it. Kind of harkens back to the days of the Titan kill event. You know what I mean? Back when it was like, oh man, a Titan's gonna die.
Yeah, now it's like, well, okay. Well, I don't know. I think it's funny because a lot of things have gone wrong. I think all the time that I've ever seen that kind of event happen, it's been pretty exciting. Maybe especially for people who haven't fought against Titans or been around them when they blow up. But yeah, this is your chance if you want to check that out. These kind of events aren't as prominent as they used to be.
Well, I was just going to say the reason for that is it takes somebody quitting the game to sacrifice their Titan, right? Back in the day, it was a casino that was like, backing it, the sponsorship of a Titan kill event.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks everybody for joining us. Want to thank Tiberius, Dirk, Tom, oops, I almost said I totally almost outed you. Apotheny, and Caleb, thanks for jumping in and walking down memory lane with us. I'd like to thank McLeod for helping us produce the show, and also Sunshine Harvester, who actually does some of the audio cleanup for us now. Really appreciate it. Again, there is a Patreon if you want to help the show. We're going to look for funding goals. That's all going to be laid out in advance, so you guys will know what we're working towards, and you don't have to participate if you don't want to. But we really appreciate the help. It helps the show get better. I would also like to entertain the idea, and probably will think about this a bit more before I actually ask for it. But I want to do an ISK drive as well, so that we can start paying people that participate in the show in ISK, so that they can have some of the weight lifted off them. Most people here, more wealthy than they need to be, but occasionally we want to help funding in game as well. Thank you very much. The great 230 people that showed up to listen this early in the morning, or actually for the US anyway. Love to see you guys here. You're a big part of the show, telling us what you think and giving us your questions, and even Nosy Gamer correcting us when we don't have all the information. Really appreciate it. The show's not really possible without all the help that goes into it. So thank you all very much. Thanks for a great first year, and hopefully we'll have a great second year too. That's all we got this week.
Go vote. Go vote.
Yeah.
Yes. Get your votes in the CSM.
That's all we got for Talking in the Stations this week. We'll see you next week.
Semnol ka ke mo fa seda.